Hello, everyone. I'm Heather Schwartz from Knowable World, and I'm here with my co founder of Knowable World, Scott Powell. We're here today to talk about the set of live free history classes that we're running this summer. So we have two levels. We have an elementary level and a junior and senior high level. So you'll choose the level that is appropriate for your child. And then we have five topics to choose from. We have American history, Chinese history, Europe and Russia, ancient Greece and Rome, and ancient Egypt. So you can choose any or all of those classes to enroll your children in this summer. You can find details about that at knowableworld.com. So today we just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of exactly what those classes are all about, what you can do in a 1 hour class, and what will be covered just briefly in each of those five introductory classes. So, Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you can do in history in 1 hour and what the students are going to get from a 1 hour class?
All right, sure. Well, I think we need to start with something really important, which is that at Knowable World, we don't approach history in a conventional way, let's say, right? Our approach to history is that history is the revelation and explanation of the world we live in. So that should be a really important part of what motivates our students here as a part of these 1 hour sessions, because what they'll be getting is an introduction to a series of topics that are really important in order to make sense of the world we live in. So that's the key. It's not about, an encyclopedic treatment. It's not about me droning on about tons of wars and other facts to be rote memorized, but of course forgotten at some point in the near future. It's much more about this compelling picture of the world. How did it come to be the way that it is? In many cases, of course, it'll be an introduction to topics that students are not familiar with, and that's great. It'll be a chance for them to see that there's a great and big, fascinating world out there to learn more about.
Right. That's great. Yes, that is foundational to the Knowable World approach is that it is history is not the study of the past because there's just way too much to study and a lot of it is very interesting and sort of a storytelling kind of way, but then a lot of it is really, really boring. And so, we want our kids to come out with an understanding of the way the world is now and how it got that way so that they can really navigate their own lives in the world. And that's very important. And so, in these 1 hour introductory classes, what exactly are we going to talk about? Let's go through the five classes and see exactly how that applies and what that's going to look like. So the first one is American history. So what are we going to look at in American history in 1 hour?
Right. So, of course, a revelation and explanation of America in particular as this very important country in the world, right? The United States is a country that stands for certain things and plays a unique role in the world. So, what does it stand for? Well, clearly, we have an election coming up that really will determine to some extent what it is that America stands for. And that's part of the story. It's about elections, it's about a country that has a constitution that has stood longer than any other in the world. Even though it's a young country, it is the oldest living constitution in the world. So, wow, that's fascinating. How did we get here? It's also a country that is the world police power. And so, whatever's going on in the world, we have this incredibly powerful country that is involved in world events as well. So, what we'll do in this introduction is we'll take a look at that. There'll be an orientation effectively to current events. And then the question will be asked, well, where did America come from and how did it come to be the way that it is now? So, of course, that takes us back to a little bit of the setting of colonial times and then the American Revolution, the Declaration of Independence, and all of the events that unfolded that brought us to where we are now. So that's American history in one lesson. And then the goal with the other lessons is to build on that and to allow students to see similarly what role other cultures are playing in the world. So for China, for instance, we have a country which what I encourage the students to do to grasp the importance of China is simply to go on a scavenger hunt in their homes and to turn over all their devices and to look at those tags on their toys and on various items in their homes. And they'll see that phrase, right? They'll see that those three words, made in China. And why is that? And what I will tell them is that China is a very ancient culture that used to have trade with even far away cultures such as ancient Rome. But that in modern times, in fact, when I was born and when their parents were born, China was not trading with the world at all. And so, wow, what's going on? Why? What's this? What's the story of this fascinating culture that basically struggled enormously with what we call globalization, and that adopted a form of government called communism? There is a really important vocabulary word for the study of history, and how China changed in modern times and became this terribly important trading nation. So there's another crucial topic in filling in the big pieces of the puzzle concerning the world we live
Right. Yeah. Okay. So again, we see how we start with the world that we live in and being very aware of what it's like, and then, finding the story in history that brings us to this point. Okay, and so then the next three classes are Europe and Russia, and then the ancient
in.
world. So let's talk about Europe and Russia. How does that apply to Europe and Russia?
Right. So Europe and Russia, right? I mean, in the traditional approach to history, these are topics that seem very divorced from life as we experience it, because Europe and Russia are across the ocean, and it seems like things going on over there are just very separate from our lives, right? But clearly, they are not, because America is very involved in the Russia Ukraine war. So here we have just the latest episode in a long history of wars, unfortunately, on that continent, in that region. It's important to understand why these cultures are the way that they are and what it is that they're struggling with and what the relationship is to America. So there's such a fascinating background story there. And that's part of, again, explaining the world that we live in. So that with America, with China, with Europe and Russia, we're talking about contemporary cultures. We're talking about important cultures of today. Of course, when we go to ancient Greece and Rome, ancient Egypt, it doesn't feel the same. So how does our approach work there? Well, actually, it remains the same. And the way that it works is that in American history, we talk about things like democracy and the fact that the United States, the American form of government, is technically known as a Republican form of government. So we have these ideas: democracy, republic. Where do we get them? Well, actually, we got them from ancient Greece and ancient Rome. So, in other words, our lives today are not merely the product of events that have transpired over the past decades, let us say, but actually over millennia. So we are connected to a story that goes back thousands of years. That's part of the fascination of history that I hope to be able to impart to the kids. And when it comes to ancient Egypt, well, it's certainly a more indirect connection in a sense, because we don't copy the Egyptians in terms of their religious beliefs, or we don't live in pyramids or bury our dead in gigantic pyramids either. So we don't share any cultural values with the ancient Egyptians, but they're still fascinating people, and they're among the first that we know of to have an organized society. And what did that look like? And they were people, right? So in other words, as people, they're just fundamentally interesting. They're fascinating because they're so different from us, and it stretches our mind to entertain this thought that people thousands of years ago were doing certain things that are similar to us, but of course also different. And that's the purpose of an introduction to history, is to open up your thought to this great big world that we live in, how amazing, big, and historical that it is.
Right, good. Okay, that's great for today. Thanks so much for joining us, and we hope that we'll see your students this summer in the free live history classes.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks again. Bye.